Hello, and today I'll be going over pivoting with Meterpreter 101. If you're completely new to pivoting, Meterpreter, or just general hacking, this is the video for you. I'm going to show you exactly which steps you need to run, how you need to run them, and we'll go through them all comprehensively. Okay, let's go ahead and start. So as a basic overview, what we will be doing is starting off from our Kali Linux box. Kali Linux box is going to be your penetration box that you will be utilizing. What you'll be doing is gaining a foothold from the Kali Linux box into the Ubuntu box, like so. So you will gain a foothold into the Ubuntu box, and once you've established that foothold, then you will utilize it as a proxy, essentially a middleman. All communication will go from the Kali box to the Ubuntu box, interpreter session, to the Windows server, and we will establish a remote desktop connection with the Windows server. If this all sounds very complex, I recommend that you just follow along and bear with the video. This video is just a walkthrough. There isn't a lab that you can simulate this on, but it's meant to give you a 101 on what's being done. You could utilize these commands in any environment that you're currently in, whether that be for another classroom or if you're trying to tackle a box. These steps will show you exactly what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, and I'll ensure that you understand it. So let's go ahead and start. Okay, to help you visualize this even better, I have a really wide screen so I can show you my Kali box. It's right here, and it's on the left side, and right in the middle, I have the Ubuntu box, virtual machine, and to the right of that, I have my Windows 2012 server. All of them are running at the same time. And what we'll do is we'll start off with the Kali box. So as we're going through it, I'm going to show you. However, I will establish a SSH connection from Kali to Ubuntu. All right, so let me go ahead and open up the terminal for you. Also, if I do an ifconfig here, you can see that I am connected to the 192.168.56 network here for my Kali machine. And the Ubuntu machine, if we do an ifconfig, I've established it so it has two interfaces. Essentially, what that means, if we go back to the image, is that it has an IP address interface with the Kali box, and it can interface with Windows Server. That's why it's a great proxy in this situation. And in a real-world scenario, you may gain a foothold to a web server, and from that web server, you may want to pivot internally, and this would essentially give you the 101 of how you would do so. So let's go ahead and minimize that. I also want to mention that everything that you learn here is for educational purposes. Strongly recommended for some exams like the EJPT and such, where you'll definitely need to utilize this. So here you can see that this is also part of the 156 network. So 192.68.56 right here. And so it interfaces. That means that these two machines can communicate with one another. However, the Kali box, our box here, isn't able to communicate with the Windows Server box over here. So this means that we will have to utilize the Ubuntu box to gain a foothold to the Windows Server so that we can access it from our Kali box. So here you can see the interface for the Windows Server is on the 10.0.2.15 network and the 10.0.3.4 network. However, it doesn't have a connection to the Kali box, so they can't talk to one another. So let's go ahead and make our payload. This is going to be the first step of the process. In order to stay organized, I recommend that you go ahead and just create a folder, call it pivot, and we'll be utilizing that folder. So here you can see my desktop. I have a folder here called pivot. I'm just going to go to it real quick. Here we go. I'm going to open that folder up. Here we can see a payload I made earlier. I'm just going to remove that. Trash. And for your purposes, just make a folder called pivot on your desktop. Next, we'll right click and open a terminal here from here. And this will open up a terminal from this path, from that location. All right, so now we understand our IP addresses. Let me go ahead and pull up my display here. This is on the 192.168.56.7. This is on the 192.168.56.19. I mean, they can talk to one another, but it also interfaces with the 10.0.3.5, and the Windows Server only interfaces on the 10.0.3.4, meaning they could communicate with each other from the 10.0.3 network. Okay, so that's what that means. I just want to make sure you understand. All right, so let's go ahead and create a payload. And this payload, what we're going to do, I'll talk you through what the payload is doing here, is we're using MSF Venom to create a Meterpreter reverse TCP payload for Linux, because we want to get this onto the Ubuntu server. Here you can see the host is going to be the Ubuntu server, or actually the AL host is going to be the Kali box. So going back to my diagram here, the AL host for this payload is going to be the Kali box. We're going to get it on the Ubuntu box. We're going to get the payload over here, and then it's going to connect back to the Kali box. So we need to make sure that that payload, when it gets here, will connect back over here. So therefore, we're specifying this IP address. Okay, so that's why it's the 192.168.57.7. That's the Kali box IP address. And then next, you can see we're creating a payload for Linux. -f file type is an ELF, which is for Linux. Output it and call this payload called job, for like a script job, and it will connect back to the Kali box on port 8080. Okay, so next we'll go ahead and press enter, and we'll just give that a second to create the payload, which will be stored here in this folder. Okay, now that that's complete, we can see that the payload is now here, and we're going to want to make it an executable. So we're going to change the permissions for this payload, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to enter the command here. Okay, here we ran chmod plus x, which makes it an executable. Next, what we'll do is we'll start an SSH session with the Ubuntu server. All right, so what I'll do is enter that command next here. So let's go put that in. And we're starting an SSH session with the Ubuntu server using the Ubuntu user, and we'll specify the Ubuntu server IP address. So we are connecting to this. So we'll go ahead and connect to it. And it's going to ask for the password, which in this case is Ubuntu. And we're in. All right, so now that we have a connection that interfaces with Ubuntu, we can go ahead and run that payload from it. What we'll do in this case is I'll just move this aside, and we'll open up a new terminal. And next we're going to transfer this jobs over to Ubuntu. So we need to make sure we get that over to Ubuntu. So we'll go ahead and run this next command here. This is going to be secure copy, and what it's going to do is it's going to secure copy the job payload to the Ubuntu server using the Ubuntu user at the IP address of the Ubuntu server. It is going to drop this payload into the Ubuntu server's directory right there, and we'll go ahead and press enter. And it's asking for the password, so I'll put the password. All right. And next, what we'll do is we'll come over to the Ubuntu server, and I'm just going to show you that it actually ran. So now you can see the job is right there, and that's going to be the executable script. All right, so now that we have the executable script in place, what we'll do now is go ahead and start up a MSF console. MSF FS console, go ahead and use that for our listener. Go ahead and wait for that to run. All right, and we'll go ahead and use the exploit multi-handler. And I'll put these commands in the description of this video. Can't put in the comment section, too many characters. All right, next we'll set the L host to our localhost. And set the L port to 8080. So earlier we made the payload. Next we need to set up a listener to listen for a connection back from the payload. So next we'll go ahead and set it to a Linux reverse shell, and then we'll run it. All right, with that set, we'll go ahead and come over here and run the executable. Or what we can also do is, rather than actually having to do that, we can just go to our SSH session we have with the Ubuntu server. Let's say in this case, we're able to brute force SSH or gain credentials from a web server and get access to Ubuntu's web server via SSH. In this case, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and run that payload. So I'll do job. Okay. Need to do a /. And now you can see I'm starting to get a connection to my Meterpreter terminal here. So now that we have that, we now have a connection from Kali to this machine, except it's in Metasploit and it's in a Meterpreter session there. Okay, so with this set, what we'll do next is we will run a ping sweep. And before we go into that, what we'll do is we will enumerate this box that we've now gained a foothold in by using ifconfig. And here we can see the different interfaces. So what I'm looking for is I'm looking for interfaces that I currently don't have access to. And I don't have access to this 10.0.2.15 network, and I don't have access to this 10.0.3.5 network. So if we take a look at my diagram here, currently the Linux box and the Ubuntu box are both on the 192.168.56 network. And I can see that there's a network with the 10.0.3, and I want to gain access to that. And I also want to see what's on the other side. So I'm going to run a ping sweep. So I'm going to run a command through my Meterpreter shell. Meterpreter is then going to do a ping sweep on this network and identify that there is a host on 10.0.3.4. And we will do some more enumeration. All right, so let's go ahead and run that ping sweep. So based off this information here, and run host multi-gathering ping sweep, and our host will set it to the 10.0.3.0/24, and then we'll run it. And now what it's going to do, it's going to scan the 10.0.3 network, and it quickly identifies that there's a host on 10.0.3.1, which most likely is typically going to be a router. And we have another host on 10.0.3.0, and I'll just run. If you start getting this, you can do CC. We could just do enter. Actually, C. Yeah, CCC. So Control C, Control C, Control C, and that will allow you to get past that. All right, so now we'll scroll back up. And it's typically normal to get these. Sometimes there are errors, But in this case, what we're really interested in seeing is just those first few IP addresses that were identified. And we have the one, which is right here, which is most likely a router device. We have 10.0.3.3, which if we look at our Ubuntu box, it's currently interfacing on 10.0.3.5, right? So that's Ubuntu. And we have another host on 10.0.3.4, and this is the Windows server. So this is our target. So our target's been acquired, and we can see that there's a few other hosts here, 10.0.3.2, although that might be some type of VirtualBox configuration, considering I'm using VirtualBox for this lab. All right, great. So next, we've acquired the target. We'll go ahead and run some commands here. And so we'll give that a second. So yeah, these are trap and show errors, not big deal. Let me go on back to my display here. So we have a connection to the Ubuntu box, and the Ubuntu box has just scanned this network and it's identified the Windows server. Okay, great. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to set up a SOCKS proxy. And a SOCKS proxy will allow us to proxy our traffic. And so what we'll do is we'll have to background this. So let me go ahead and just background this. So you just type background. And when you type background, you can see now, you can see the multi-handler. Next, we'll use the auxiliary server SOCKS proxy. Okay. And then we'll set the SRV port to 9050, which is the default port that SOCKS proxy uses. And I'll show you the SOCKS proxy configurations if this is sounding a little confusing. But just bear with me, input the commands, you'll be good. All right, next we'll set the host for our local host, which is 0.0.0.0. And we'll set the SOCKS version to version 4. Okay. And then we'll type run, and it's going to go ahead and start that. Now, while it's doing that, what we'll do is we'll just type background. Although we just need something to break it, it will continue running in the background. So you don't have to worry about it. Just type background, saying unknown commands, and then it looks like it exits out of it, but it's still running in the background. So just let it run. All right, so next I'll show you the proxy chains config and where you can go to actually change it. So proxy chains is reinstalled by default, and what I'll do is I'll just put in this command here. It's a sudo nano etc proxy chains, and we're going to the config file. So this proxy chains 4.config. And then next we'll go ahead and put in the sudo password. Okay, and after you do that, what should happen is you should be able to see the proxy chains file here. I'll just scroll down all the way to the bottom where we have this entry here. It says SOCKS 4 127.0.0.1 9050. That sounds familiar, right? Localhost 9050. So you can just go ahead and uncomment it. So just delete the hashtag, the pound symbol, and then Control O, enter, Control X as an X-ray, we'll close it. All right, so with that complete, what we're going to do next is we are going to configure our Meterpreter session to route traffic to the 10.0.3.0 network. And an easy way to do it would be to just run this command here. So I'll show you which command you can run for that. What we'll do is we'll go back to our session. So we'll go session dash I as in India, lowercase, and our sessions with an S. dash I is in India. And then now you can see that we have one session, and this is the Meterpreter session we have. So we want to actually jump into that session. So we'll just do that. And you can see it's the ID of 1, so we'll set that to 1, jump into that session, we're back in. And now that we're back into that session, what we can do is we can check our auto routes. And our auto routes, essentially Meterpreter acts as kind of like a switch in that it can route traffic. And so your computer typically has a routing table. Switches have routing tables. And Meterpreter can create and modify our routing table so we know where to send traffic. So if we do run autoroute-p, it'll show us what auto routes we have. And right now we don't have any, but we need to set one so we can communicate with another network. So I'll go ahead and input autoroute-s as in Sahara, lowercase, and then 10.0.3.0/24. And what this is going to do is it's going to say, hey, any traffic that's destined for, so we have a session with Meterpreter on Ubuntu, any traffic that's destined for this network, which we can't interface with, go ahead and route that through Meterpreter, and Meterpreter will take care of it. So we go back here, set it, and now you can see that we have an auto route set. And we'll go ahead and check what the auto route looks like by entering this command. And here you can see that the subnet is 10.0.3.0 and 255.255.255.0, and it's on session 1. All right, so the auto route's been set. What we'll do now is we will use proxy chains to do an in-map scan on the Windows server. And so all we need to do is open up a terminal like I have here, and we'll go ahead and run that in-map scan. All right, so now that we know that there's a host on 10.0.3.4, we're going to check to see if that host has the RDP port 3389 open, and I've configured it to be open, so it should show that it's open. Here you can see it's open. You can see it's also identifying a Windows server. Well, guys, we actually did it. Now we're able to get traffic routed from the Kali box to the Ubuntu box to the Windows server. Okay, so all that has worked out for us, and we'll go ahead and carry on. So the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and exploit the RDP that's open, and the way that we're going to do that is we're going to go ahead and forward our traffic, and the way that we do that is we have to do it through Meterpreter. So let's go ahead and go back to our Meterpreter session. I'm going to do a port forward. So any traffic that's destined for the localhost on port 3300, I want you to forward it to 3389 and send that over to the Windows server on 10.0.3.4. So we'll go ahead and add that. And now that it's added the port forward option in there, what we can do now is we can establish a connection to that Windows server. So I'll go ahead and open up a new terminal here. And what I'll do is I'll just copy the command I have. I'm going to be using our desktop. You can go ahead and use xvrdp if that works for you. It's not working for me because I had an issue with the library. I fixed the library, but still having issues. But anyhow, I'll leave the command in for xvrdp if it's working for you. If that's not working for you, you can use our desktop. We're using the user administrator on the Windows server. We're authenticating with the password, okay? And then we're setting it so the localhost is going to get this traffic on 3300. And so what's going to happen, essentially, I'm going to show you here, is when I press enter, we're going to get a connection. Okay. So now we have a RDP connection with the Windows server on the Kali box, as you see here. The great thing about this is that we have now established a foothold with Ubuntu, and from that foothold, we're able to configure it basically as a proxy and proxy our traffic to the Windows server. Okay, and now the Windows server is able to then um, we're able to then establish a RDP session with the Windows server. All right, so all that's configured and good, and this is pretty awesome, right? So we'll go ahead and do ipconfig, and you can see I'm actually connected to it. I did put a flag on there, and so I'll go ahead and check the flag. And yeah, it's actually the US flag. Hurrah. All right, so we completed that. I hope you guys really enjoy this video on how to pivot with Meterpreter and MSF console. This video did take me a while, but I wanted to show you this because I know it's pretty important if you're trying to go for exams, or maybe you're trying to, to complete a lab. You may need to know this information. I hope you guys like and subscribe, because creating this lab environment for both the Kali box, the Ubuntu box, and server took me approximately 4 hours to actually create, to make sure that I configured everything and ran through it once or twice before uploading the video. So I'll go ahead and post the commands in the description. But thank you for your support. Have a good day. Danny out.